I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy Dore here with Malcolm Fleschner. And we all remember this headline from the 2020 campaign. It says, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation, dozens of former intelligence officials say. Now, we've all learned since, if it wasn't obvious at the time, that that was a complete lie. These dozens of former intelligence officials simply invented this claim that, in their view, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which showed that Hunter Biden was practicing in, DC Corruption 101, trading on his family name for business opportunities, including in Ukraine, where he got a very lucrative seat on the board of the energy giant Burisma. That these intelligence officials told us that leaks from his laptop about all this all came from Russia. And that was obvious at the time. It was a scam, and multiple accounts have confirmed this since, that the emails were real, that these intelligence officials, they even admitted actually in that statement they had no evidence, but the media, of course, ignored that to parrot their claim. Well, now we've recently learned, and we've covered this on the Jimmy Dore Show, where this scam came from. It came from the Biden administration itself. Here's the headline. Biden team sparked effort to kill Hunter laptop story, says former CIA boss. And this is the former deputy director of the CIA, Mike Morell, who organized this letter, admitting that he wrote it at the behest of the Biden campaign.
According to a letter released Thursday night from the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees, former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell told congressional investigators that days after the laptop story, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, then a Biden campaign advisor, reached out to Morell and set in motion the events that led to the intelligence official's public statement.
Here's what Morell testified. He was asked prior to Blinken's call, you did not have any intent to write this statement. Answer, I did not. Okay, in questions. Okay, so his call triggered? Answer, it did, yes. Question, that intent in you? Yes, absolutely. And then Morell testified that after a debate between Biden and Trump, in which Biden then invoked that letter, making that fake claim that his own campaign had inspired, after that debate, Morell received a call from Steve Ricchetti, who's the chairman of the Biden campaign, to thank him for writing the statement. He was the head of the Biden campaign at the time. He thanked me for putting that statement out. And he had many reasons to thank Morell for that statement, because not only was Biden able to use it in the debate to deflect attention from the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, but the media, of course, parroted it, as the stenographers that they are.
Secret emails.
A really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
So this is a big scandal, okay? You have not only a fake claim, but a fake claim that comes from the Biden campaign that is aided by a bunch of former intelligence officials and then is parroted by the U.S. media. So you think now with this coming out that, oh yeah, we just repeated a lie that not only was a lie, but that was generated by the Biden campaign as part of its effort to win, to try to undermine reporting on the Hunter Biden leaks and, of course, enable their censorship, because that's what happened. After that statement came out from these former intelligence officials, social media giants like Facebook and Twitter censored reporting on the Hunter Biden story. So this, you think, was a big scandal with this coming out. The Biden administration was the basis for all of this. Well, how is the media responding to this revelation? Well, here's one example. Here's the Washington Post. House GOP's latest Hunter Biden laptop theory is less than meets the eye. So they're calling the admission that the Biden campaign sparked this entire lie. They're calling this a theory from the House GOP, not an admission from one of the participants. So that's the Washington Post response to this. They're trying to minimize it. Now, one of the few cable news shows to actually cover this, because most cable news outlets have just simply ignored this, because why would they cover this? They took part in the lie. So why would they do any honest self-reflection? Is CBS News, and they had on Senator Chris Coons, who is a surrogate for the Biden campaign, very close with Biden himself. And he was asked about this revelation from Mike Morell.
You were a surrogate back in 2020 for the Biden campaign. And in the final weeks right before the election, there was that New York Post story about damaging information found on Hunter Biden's laptop. And then days later, 51 officials wrote a letter warning it had the earmarks of a Russian information operation. Fast forward to last week, House Republicans released portions of a transcript suggesting it was a call between then Biden advisor Antony Blinken and former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morell that, quote, set in motion the events that led to the statement they released. Democrats say they have portions of the transcript showing no request was made to write a letter. It was just a call for advice.
Oh, yes. So we're supposed to believe now that because Blinken, according to Morell said, my memory, I do not recall him asking me directly. So we're supposed to believe that because Blinken didn't directly ask Morell, that there's nothing to see here, that Morell somehow came up with this idea on his own. Even though not only did Blinken call Morell to talk about this, but afterwards, the Biden campaign called Morell to thank him for putting out the statement. But yet we're supposed to believe that because Morell doesn't recall Blinken directly asking him, that didn't have an impact in getting him to write this letter.
So do you recall what happened with the campaign and the drafting of this letter?
I don't have any either specific recollection, nor was I directly involved in that. But as you laid out there, Margaret, there's a big difference between the characterization by some House Republicans and the actual full transcript and what I believe actually happened there. Frankly, so far, all of this is full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. I don't think there's a there in terms of some malign coordination. I do think that it had the signature elements of a Russian influence campaign, and it was not inappropriate for national security officials, former national security officials, to say this.
And those signature elements of a Russian campaign were what? That they were factual leaks about a Democratic candidate's corruption. So that means this must come from Russia. Like what are those earmarks of Russia?
Come on,
here?
Aaron. Don't play dumb. You know, it's classic. You know the Russians, what they do. They get a laptop. They put a bunch of stuff on it that's not real. They put some porn on there. They put some emails. They put years and years of emails. Then they slyly slip it to some laptop repair shop somewhere that is connected to the Republicans, and they know they're going to connect the dots and they're going to forward it along. Classic. Oh, I mean,
do they also
they've done it 1,000 times before, Aaron?
Do they also drive?
Come on.
Do they also drive Hunter Biden to the laptop repair shop and drop him off and tell him to go in and drop off his computer?
No, it's a Hunter Biden lookalike. Come on, you know.
So he's saying all these crazy things. There's nothing to see here. It was right to call this Russian, and he's not facing any pushback whatsoever.
Looks like at this point a Russian influence effort.
Let me run that. He's saying, he's still saying.
This looks like at this point a Russian influence effort.
He's still saying this is a Russian influence effort, when right in front of his face is all the evidence that this was in fact a Russiagate influence effort. This was taking the familiar playbook of blaming Russia for anything that embarrasses domestic elites, especially when it comes to Democratic Party corruption. 2016, Hillary Clinton's emails embarrassed the party, showed corruption, showed bias against Bernie Sanders. They responded by blaming Russia and coming up with conspiracy theories that Trump and Russia were in cahoots. 2020, the exact same playbook. We even have evidence the Biden campaign triggered this scam, as is admitted to under oath. And this senator is still saying that there's plenty of evidence that this actually was indeed a Russian operation and not facing any challenge at all. But that's the one rare instance where this is even discussed, or a very rare instance where this is even being discussed in corporate media. Otherwise, it's just being ignored. But here's one story on this. Again, not very many. Here's CNN Politics. GOP lawmakers ask Blinken for information on 2020 public letter from ex-Intel officials casting doubt on Hunter Biden laptop story. So Republicans are taking this admission from Morell and asking Blinken for more information, and we'll see how he responds to this. But this is now something that House Republicans are pursuing. And as this goes on, I mean, if more revelations come out, I bet we'll still see people like Chris Coons saying, no, this really was from Russia. This is just Russia, like nothing to see here. Maté is one of the few people to point out how media is basically ignoring the story. He had an article called News Blackout in Effect, the Michael Morell story is disposed of by press janitors. And he also pointed out, time to get spies out of politics, because Mike Morell, by the way, that former deputy head of the CIA who put out this letter, he's not just used as source material by the media. He is the media because he works for CBS News as a paid contributor, and he even hosts a podcast. Here is Glenn Greenwald with his take.
The Biden administration injected into the bloodstream of the intelligence community their need for this letter. They then went and published this letter that was very cautious in what it said, knowing the media would take it and exaggerate it and say it said things it didn't say. They left out the part where they admitted they had no evidence. And then Joe Biden, when he was on the few occasions asked by reporters about the revelations of the New York Post about what his son was doing in Ukraine and what he was doing in China and pursuing profitable deals, Joe Biden would say, that's Russian disinformation. One of the few times a reporter asked Joe Biden about this was during the campaign was when Bo Erickson of CBS News took a microphone and put it in Biden's face after he was getting off his campaign plane. And all he did was say, Mr. President or Mr. Vice President, what is your response to these revelations that show that your son was trading on your name in Ukraine and that you were part of profitable deals in China trading on your name? And Biden would say, what are you doing? Working for Putin? Citing this letter that the Biden campaign actually helped arrange. And for doing his job, Bo Erickson was mauled on social media by his colleagues, by other journalists who accused him of doing the work of the Kremlin because he was pursuing how it turned out to be all along accurate documents, accurate materials. And then Joe Biden himself, in the two debates that he had with Donald Trump, where Trump brought up this laptop, said, oh, everyone knows that's Russian. You're doing Putin's bidding. So it was the Biden campaign that originated this lie we now know, working with their allies in the intelligence community, getting their allied media outlets to spread this lie 2 weeks before the campaign, getting their allied big tech firms to censor the reporting, and then having Joe Biden himself cite this lie, this false letter of disinformation from the CIA as though he had nothing to do with it, claiming, oh, I don't know, the CIA says this is Russia, so I don't need to answer this. Do you see this multi-institutional scam that this was?
And here's Biden. This is what Glenn was referencing in one of the debates.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
You know what's funny about that? When he says there's overwhelming evidence, even that statement himself that he triggered even says we have no evidence. So even this lie, he's even lying about the lie that he sparked, because the letter itself was actually, as Glenn said, the letter was careful to actually say, which the media ignored, we have no evidence of Russian involvement. We just think based on our experience that it is Russian involvement. It's like basically through ESP, they were able to intuit that Russia was behind this laptop, even though they actually admitted they have no evidence. And Biden is such a liar that not only is he hiding the fact that he sparked this lie, but he's lying about the nature of the lie, because they even said they have no evidence, but he's saying there's overwhelming evidence, which they never said. It's hard to keep track of the lies, Malcolm.
Well, what I think is funny is that it's not actually a classic Russian disinformation operation. It's a classic Dick Cheney disinformation operation, because that's what Dick Cheney used to do, is plant stories about the Iraq War, or leading up to the Iraq War in the New York Times, and then but he would be the anonymous source for the story, or his people, and then he would point to that story and say, well, the New York Times, I think Jimmy's pointed this out, and so it's a nice little tight circle. Oh, Joe Biden, to his credit, is taking it to another step and is then misrepresenting his own lie.
Absolutely.
So that's, that's, you gotta, you get the extra points for that, I think.
And this ties in because they're all part of the same neocon establishment. Joe Biden supported Cheney's war in Ukraine. He basically led the Senate in the Senate Democratic caucus in supporting the invasion of Iraq and said he didn't regret it. He would have done the exact same thing again. And because they share these priorities, they are fine with lying to the American public to serve their political ends, whether it's the war in Iraq or getting themselves elected. 2016, another neocon, Hillary Clinton. They paid for the Steele dossier. They generated that fake claim that Russia and Trump were communicating through a bank server. And then when they got their media allies to put that out there in the public, they then turned around and said, oh, look at this. Trump has to answer for this, for his ties between himself and Russia, when they themselves had generated the lie. And someone who was very good at helping them spread their lies in both 2016 and 2020 was both CNN and their guest here, Adam Schiff.
Of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Does it surprise you at all that this information Rudy Giuliani is peddling very well could be connected to some sort of Russian government disinformation campaign?
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. And, you know, the idea that the president,
What's the false narrative, by the way? That it's not corrupt for the son of a vice president to get a job on a gas company board in Ukraine, paying him $80,000 or whatever a month. By the way, not long after his dad's government organizes or backs a coup in Ukraine. Is that not true? Is that a false narrative? Because that happened.
the White House counsel and others were made aware that Giuliani was being used by Russian intelligence and using Russian intelligence in the sense of meeting with an agent of the Kremlin and pushing out this Kremlin false narrative. The idea that they were knowing and still on the floor of the Senate during the impeachment trial, pushing this Kremlin narrative is pretty breathtaking. But I guess at this point, we can't be shocked by anything this administration does, no matter how craven. But clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
It's not like a Rudy.
So again, the smear came from the Biden campaign. It was pushed by their intelligence allies and media and congressional allies as well. And zero accountability, just like everything else so far. Zero.
We're telling jokes in Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Chicago, Rosemont, San Diego, and more. Go to jimmydore.com to get a link for all those tickets. Plus, you can watch my new special, COVID Lies Are Funny.